Hi all, and welcome to PowerShell for Beginners course. I'm Alex, and I am the author of the free ebook that you can find on my website and on Udemy shortly if I manage to upload it there, together with this content that you see here. Now, the reason I wrote this book is because PowerShell is becoming something that's absolutely necessary for each and every IT professional out there. Either you are doing packaging or infrastructure management or automation tasks, or even in the development world, PowerShell is mostly used. And even if you write certain code as a developer, there might be cases where it's much easier to implement some things that are in PowerShell available in the .NET framework in order to do some things with your programs, or as people say it now, applications. Now, my book, unlike any other books that you find there, I wanted to have a look over some practical examples, especially for the IT professionals who are in the infrastructure management world, right? And I also touched a little bit on how you can use PowerShell within Azure. Few notes here. Now, while I'm recording this video, I have my ebook on my other screen because I want to keep track of everything I'm saying to be proportionate with the chapters and the way I designed this book. So even the examples I will try to show you and explain to you are exactly the examples you will find in the ebook. If you have any further questions or any further examples that you need, feel free to search me on the web. My website is at the bottom of each page on my ebook. And apart from that, I'm curious if more people who aren't actually familiar with PowerShell are interested on having a separate space where to talk about this. The reason I'm asking is because while Reddit and Stack Overflow are two popular options these days, right? Everybody goes on Google and search for a particular problem, right? And you have your massive threads either on Reddit or Stack Overflow. I'm curious if anybody would be interested actually if I do some sort of a blog on my website, maybe not to discuss only about PowerShell, but challenges that we face in our infrastructure landscape each and every day. So without further ado, let's start with the actual PowerShell program. So I think the first question that pops in mind for people who never used PowerShell is, what exactly is PowerShell? Now, PowerShell is the first ever cross-platform scripting language developed by Microsoft. Cross-platform means that this is the only scripting language that you can use on all operating systems that are available right now in the world. So not only for Windows, you can use it for Mac, you can use it for Linux, and so forth and so on. But unlike the conventional command line interfaces or scripting languages that you are used to, now most of the languages like Visual Basic, right? This offered you the VB scripts, right? The Visual Basic scripting. Usually this output a plain text, right? A string. Well, unlike this scripting languages, or Python is another example actually. So unlike these traditional command line interfaces, now PowerShell emphasizes on the concept of objects, right? So this is more of an object-oriented approach, which allows you to manipulate and transform data, which makes it a little bit easier when you are trying to perform complex tasks, right? However, for the uninitiated ones who never used an object-oriented programming or never used scripting, or I don't know how to say this. For example, I come from a world where I wasn't used with object-oriented scripting, right? In my mind, scripting was I give you what I need, you output me that specific string or whatever it was, or integer, right, if I needed some numbers, and that's it. I was never used to actually control my data inside objects. For me, learning PowerShell, it was a little bit of a learning curve, but I think this was because my mentality and the way I was used with the scripting languages, like Python, for example, I was used to have my strings, right? Don't worry, it doesn't mean that everything you do with PowerShell will be objects and you need to somehow extract the data from the object and oh my god, what I'm going to do. No, it's not that difficult, so don't worry about it. It's only the fact on how the data is presented to you in certain queries and how you can access that data inside that particular object. And as I wrote in my book, why do we need to learn PowerShell? Now, as I said in the beginning, PowerShell nowadays is absolutely everywhere. Apart from that, Microsoft introduces new commandlets, which I'm going to explain to you. So commandlets are some sort of commands or functions, right? Let's call them functions, that you can literally control almost everything you can imagine. From your Windows devices, your operating system, you can control stuff in Azure, you can control stuff in your Active Directory, you can control group policies, you can control whatever you desire only by using these predefined commandlets. To be honest with you, most of the scripts I've done until now are all based on the default commandlets that are present inside PowerShell. Rarely did I compose a module or something else that I needed specific commands, and it was much easier for me to do that specific module. Good. Now, in terms of PowerShell, of the installation, now I have a chapter in my book where I actually explain to you how you can install PowerShell on different operating systems, right? So on Windows, that's quite easy, right? Because guess what? It's there. It's present. It's native. You don't need to do anything. You just open up your terminal. Actually, let me open it up as an administrator. Let me put it here. As you can see, it's in Windows PowerShell. And if I go to get the PowerShell version table, there you go. This is my PowerShell version, right? So I have it installed perfectly fine. I won't show in this video how you can install it in Linux or Mac OS. You have these examples inside your book. I didn't do my test environment for this, but if this is something that you think you need, please let me know in the comments or write me via email or something, and I will do a separate video, maybe one for Linux, one for macOS. I don't know. We will see, right? So in Windows, you have it there. It's fine. It's beautiful. It's here. It works. Good. So let's jump to the next chapter. And if you give me a little bit of time, I just want to follow my book. Now let's go a little bit through core features and functionalities, but first let's have a look over IDE tools, because these are actually the first things you will see when you start to develop PowerShell scripts, right? So this is the native command line, right? Actually, here I'm using the terminal. You can also check for PowerShell, right? You can have your 32-bit version or 64-bit, right? And I can open it, and it's actually the same thing, but I'm just used to the terminal. The terminal is a free utility. You can download it on the Microsoft Store, perfectly fine. Maybe you get used to it. I love the tabs. I love everything. I have multiple options here. I also have my Ubuntu. I have multiple stuff, right? Good. So let's switch back to the IDE tools. Now, unfortunately, I am one of those guys who is still used to use the PowerShell ICE. PowerShell ICE, or integrated scripting environment, as Microsoft calls it, is something that comes native inside your OS. So you don't need to install it. That's another good part, right? Why am I used to this? Because when I do some tests or I want to run something on a server or something like that, right? I don't have time to install any other IDE tools. So by default, this is the IDE I've been using since I started to learn PowerShell. This is the IDE I'm using now, and probably this will be my preferred IDE for a long time now. Hopefully Microsoft doesn't retire it. This is my hope here, so let's see, right? I already have it open, but if you want to open it, I don't want to keep anything open. I have 30,000 scripts, so search for PowerShell, and you have your PowerShell ICE right here. And wow, it opened. Look how beautiful it is, right? Okay, so this is what you will see when you open a PowerShell ICE. And you will look here and say, what the hell is this, Alex? I have no clue. Don't worry, these are all the commandlets or commands or functions or however you want to call them, right? So, sorry. So, as mentioned, this is the Windows default scripting environment for PowerShell. This includes a number of useful features that improves PowerShell scripting experience. Now, it provides a simple tabbed interface for script editing, and you can work on multiple scripts at the same time, right? So you can have a new one and a new one and a new one and so forth and so on, right? Or you can also execute commands directly from the script editor right here, right? And you also have access to all your available commands, which are available on your system. When I mean available on your system, I really do mean on your system, because from my perspective, if you see here, I have this add AD permissions and so forth and so on. These are commandlets that are not by default on your operating system. This is a module specifically designed for Azure manipulation, or Azure accessing, or however we want to call it, with PowerShell, right? So this is a separate module that you need to install. I'll cover I'll cover this part a little bit later on in this video. This is more or less in the end. So until then, we will skip this. But these are all your commands, right? The next option you have in terms of IDEs is Visual Studio Code. And let me see. Yep, I have it here installed. So if I now open up my Visual Studio Code, I actually have one PowerShell script opened. This is from the PowerShell App Deployment Toolkit. Now, when you install Visual Studio Code, you don't have the PowerShell extension. So if we go to extensions and search for PowerShell, right, you see I have it installed. Just click, you just search for PowerShell, and this is the one you want, the first one, which is developed by Microsoft. This extension allows you to have this development environment for PowerShell scripting, right? Again, I like it. I'm just not a huge fan, right? This is more or less your choice. Each and everybody does it how they like. Or some people, I heard, they only use Visual Studio Code because it has a dark mode. So yeah, everybody with its own flavor, right? The third tool which I don't have it installed, is PowerShell Studio. PowerShell Studio, it's something very robust. Now, this was introduced, if I remember correctly, before the Visual Studio Code extension for PowerShell. I don't want to say anything wrong, but I think it was before that. And that was the first ever mega IDE for PowerShell. What's also nice in that IDE is that you can actually create your graphical user interface much easier with PowerShell, because it allows you to edit your forms, right? Something like in Visual Studio, which is nice. The downside regarding PowerShell Studio is that it's paid, and if I remember, it is a little bit expensive for your classical IT professional, which does scripts here and there, right? So if you're not some hardcore user guy, I don't think you'll maybe opt for that. So again, this is your choice. And the last tool, which again, I don't have it installed, unfortunately, is Sublime Text. Now, Sublime Text is again a cross-platform text editor. I think this is also very popular on the Linux distros, so that's why it became popular amongst the Windows users as well, or the people who are working cross platforms. What's nice about Sublime Text is that, again, it has an extension which you can use to highlight your PowerShell files, right? You need to install a certain package. I documented everything in my book, and afterwards you have everything ready to use for PowerShell. So these are more or less the main tools which are out there. Now, throughout this book, I will do everything on PowerShell ICE, because this is what I'm used to, and this is what I will use for many years ahead. Now, when you choose your IDE, it all depends on your needs. Now, I am assuming that the people who are going to watch this video, I don't think you are I don't think you are experienced programmers or scripters, right? Because experienced guys know what they like, they already know what to do. So for the beginners who are just jumping into stuff, my personal opinion is that PowerShell ICE is in fact the most easy to use IDE. You have extremely few options with it, but it gets the job done, and it doesn't confuse you with more stuff that you can see, for example, on Visual Studio Code or worse, PowerShell IDEs. Now, you need to determine also how comfortable you are on navigating and working with each IDE's user interface, right? I like PowerShell ICE. Some people might not like it. You also need to check if your IDE supports the installation of certain extensions or plugins that extend its functionality, right? Because if you are a beginner in PowerShell, you might be an experienced developer, and you are only learning PowerShell to achieve something in your code. And at that point in time, I don't think you want to mess with PowerShell ICE, right? I'm guessing you prefer to mess with Visual Studio Code. So again, that's also something you need to consider in case you need it. This is more of a topic which I've seen many people talk about. Now, another kind of guy who likes to see what's up with a certain IDE. If I like it, I use it. But there are other people who are very engaged inside that particular community of that IDE, and maybe you are one of those guys, so you might want to check out what's up with that, right? You might choose your tool based on the community it has in the background for the development, and so forth and so on. But ultimately, from my point of view, the best IDE for PowerShell development will be determined solely by your specific needs, preferences, and your project complexity. Now that we got that out of the way, let me close the Visual Studio Code and I will remain with PowerShell IS here, right? Let me clear also the code. So let's talk a bit about the PowerShell command syntax. PowerShell commands have a distinct verb noun syntax, which is also known as a commandlet, right? The verb describes the action that it will be carried out, and the noun represents the target or object on which your particular action will be carried out, right? So for example, if we check here the list of commands in the right, you have add Apex package, add Apex volume, add a Azure AD app permission, and so forth and so on. You can export your console, you can export CSV, you can do a lot of stuff. But again, the verb is the one who is going to tell you what the action will be, and the noun is on what object you are going to perform that action, right? To create a PowerShell command, the syntax is verb hyphen noun, right? So for example, if I want to get all my processes, right, inside, which are running right now on my computer, I just use get process, right? I hit enter. These are all my processes. It works, right? So what did I do here, right? I told PowerShell that I need to get something, and I told him what I want to get, right? Because if we search here, you have a lot of gets, right? This is everything on Azure. You can get a lot of stuff from Azure. Let's see what else we can get. Get event log, get file share, get the groups, get help, get your host. Yeah, let's see, actually, get host. Bam, there's the host, and so forth and so on, right? So I told PowerShell that I need to get something and where to get that from. Now, PowerShell also allows you to specify parameters in two ways: positional parameters and named parameters. Positional parameters are determined by the order in which they appear in the command. So, for example, if I want to set my location, if I want to change the current location to a specified directory, my current location where we actually perform the commands, right? Because right now I have it in C users user. This is what I have on my machine right now. If I want to change the location, I'm going to tell PowerShell set location, and let's say I go to C Windows. Now I'm running my commands inside C Windows. But as you can see, if I use the parameter name parameters are explicitly assigned a value. Now this enables you to specify parameters in any order, right? For example, I want to get the processes, right? But I want a specific process. I want a process. For example, let's see, I have Chrome open, right? I want to get that specific process, right? So I can say again, get process, like we did in the beginning, right? And then I say the name of the process, which is Chrome. And let's say I also want to get all of its modules, right? Because Chrome has multiple modules installed, right? If I hit enter, these are all the modules that Chrome uses. And if we go a little bit on top, because I think I have a lot of tabs open, give me a second. This is the size, the module name, and the file name, right? Simple. Some commandlets have multiple sets of parameters, which are referred to as parameter sets. Let's call them like that. Each parameter set represents a distinct set of parameters that can be used in conjunction with one another. So when using a commandlet with parameter sets, you must provide the necessary parameters for the specific set you intend to use. So, for example, if I want to create a new folder, right? I'm going to go in new item, right? I first must specify the path. Let's say I'm going to do something in ctemp. Then another parameter is the name of the folder I want. The name of the folder I want to create, which is new folder 2. And I also need to specify the item type, right? Because it needs to know what I have to do, right? So in here I'm going to say directory. And now let me check my ctemp. And there you go. There you go. You have it created. But see how these are multiple sets of parameters, right? Because in this commandlet, you don't just provide that you want a folder. I want a folder. No, you need to specifically say, I want a new item. Where exactly? In this path. Okay, what's the name of that new item? Well, that name is new folder 2. Okay, and what exactly is that item that you are going to call new folder in your ctemp? Well, this is actually a directory. Another powerful feature that you have with PowerShell is the pipeline operator. Now, this is actually one of the best features in PowerShell, which I absolutely love. And what that allows you is to chain multiple commands together, right? It allows you to perform complex operations by passing the output of one specific command as input to another one, right? So for example, let's look like this. I want to get service. These are all my services that are currently running on the machine or are stopped, or I don't care. All my services on the machine, right? Okay. But can I maybe sort them? For example, I want to sort this out, right? To sort something, you have another commandlet, which is sort object. All right. Now, this is the fun part. I can get all my services, then using the pipeline parameter, this is the pipeline here. I'm going to say, okay, once you get all your services, pass them as input to the sort object commandlet, and I want them sorted by status, right? Because, sorry, I forgot to tell you, or I forgot to show you. I think I need to scroll a little bit. And this is the status here, right? Because you have an object, right? Remember, I specified that when you use a specific commandlet, you will have an output as an object. And this is your object. Inside your object, you have your status, your name, and your display name. So now, if I hit enter here, everything is sorted out. See? So the running ones, the stopped ones, that's pretty much it. Yep. See how it is? See how easy it is? Now, you are probably wondering, Alex, do you really know all these commandlets by yourself? Have you remembered them all? No, I don't know a single commandlet. Oh, I know a few ones, right? The usual ones that use regularly, right? But each time I use a new commandlet or search for something, I just search for that particular commandlet, right? For example, I can, let's search for sort object, right? Sort object in PowerShell. Cool, right? So you have your sort object commandlet, right? Which is, okay, good. And the best part is that you have all your syntax documented here. Of course, you can also search for this here. So you have your sort object, you can click here, and parameters, and so forth and so on. Good, so common parameters, error action, output, warning action, blah, blah. So this is the same as per Microsoft documentation, right? But the good part is that you have also examples here, right? For example, this is a good example that we see here, right? Sort the current directory by name, right? I want to sort the objects on a specific path, right? So if I still have this, let's see, ctemp, right? Actually, this is a very good example. So in my ctemp, I have multiple things here, right? So let's copy this here, right? And if we go into our PowerShell thing here, sorry, not ctest, it's ctemp. Okay, cool. Just hit the up arrow, ctemp, and sort object. And it's already sorted, as you already see here, right? Because I have it sorted by name, but this is what PowerShell does in case you need to sort something out, right? So this is amazing because apart from all the syntax that it's presented here, right? You also get a few examples how to use it, right? Sort by file length and so forth and so on, right? So this is amazing. This is how you actually learn PowerShell, by actually going into it and search for different actions that you might want to do on certain things, and you will get all the commandlets and this is how you will actually learn them, right? Another example which I can give you in regards to the pipelines. Now, usually, if you see here, usually when I type something, right, inside the command prompt or command output, PowerShell responds again on my command output here, right? So I said, give me this, I see this. Actually, you can actually save the output in variables or even redirect your output to files. You know how easy it is to actually output something in a file with PowerShell. It's actually very easy. Let's go again with my example with get process, right? And again, I do the pipeline and I want to output everything. So we have the out file. File path will be, I don't know, let's say ctemp, I don't know, myfile.txt. Good. Hit enter. Pong. You have it here. And you have everything outputted. There you go. Amazing. The pipeline, I told you, is the most amazing thing in PowerShell. It actually does reduce your code size quite a lot, right? Apart from that, although I don't use them very much, to be honest here, we also need to talk a little bit about aliases. Now, in general, aliases are shortcuts for commonly used commands in PowerShell, right? So these allow you to use a command with a shorter or more familiar name instead of typing the full commandlet name. Although I'm not very used to it, I'm still used on doing everything on commandlet level. So remember that we use the get child item, blah, 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 blah. You can actually use the ls, if I remember correctly. Yeah, and this will show you all your files inside your current working directory. Remember, we changed our working directory to C Windows a few minutes ago. Although not all aliases are the same, because to be honest, for the ones who are in the packaging world and heard about MSIX, you know that MSIX commandlets are actually the Apex commandlets, which were designed for the Apex packages that were released before MSIX, right? So for whatever reason, Microsoft, when they launched the MSIX technology, they didn't do an additional set of commandlets, right? And everybody was a little bit confused because I had this discussion with multiple people, and they were like, what's the commandlet, for example, for installing an MSIX package? And I was like, actually, it's install Apex package. And they were like, wait, those are for Apex packages? And I was like, yeah, unfortunately, you don't have a special dedicated parameter. But although I don't think it's documented, I really want to check this. You can get all your Apex or MSI packages, blah, blah, you can get them all in one single commandlet, and that's called get Apex package. And this will output you all your MSIX and Apex packages that you have installed on your device. Now, funny enough, I don't know if this is actually documented. Let me see. And apparently Bing doesn't show me this. Even on Microsoft Learn, you still have the old commandlet for get Apex packages. I don't think we have an alias. You can also use get app package, which actually will do the exact same thing as get Apex package. Now, the funny thing here is that technically this is an alias. Remember that I said that technically aliases are something that are much shorter and help you remember that specific command much easier. Well, in this case, it's only a difference of a letter. I don't know, maybe it makes it easier for the people if you want to get all your app packages. I'm guessing that makes sense, right? Because people might not differentiate between Apex and MSI packages, but whatever, it's there, it's an alias, it works, it's fine, it's nice. Let's move forward. Good, so we covered a little bit the basics of PowerShell, right? Now, technically, you can find your commandlets if you're not using PowerShell Ice. You can find all your commandlets. I think it's get command minus command type commandlet. And this will output you all your available commandlets that you have, right? Again, as mentioned, I have multiple modules installed. That's why you see the graph, the Intune ones, so forth and so on. It's a useful command if you ever want to find something. Also, you can learn about a specific commandlet directly from your PowerShell. You don't need to search the web. If you don't have access to the web and you are on a server with no access for whatever reason, you can use the get help. And I think you type, let's see, get process. Yeah, exactly. So you use the get help commandlet and you just type the commandlet you want to find out about, right? So I want to learn about get process, right? So again, this is more or less documented exactly as you see it on Microsoft. Let's see here. Unfortunately, yeah, it's the same. Unfortunately, unlike on Microsoft, you don't have any examples, right? But it's a nice place to start, right? And also it says your aliases, right? So you have your PS, right, for process, and GPS for get processes. Makes sense. Apart from that, which I also wrote in the book. Again, I'm double checking with my book. I want to keep everything as in the book. I forgot to tell you, and this is something very important. Now, most of the times when you are going to do anything with PowerShell, 80 or 90% of the times you would like to find something or select something inside an object. And this is where you'll use two of the most popular commandlets, in my opinion. the where object and the select object. These will allow you to filter and select specific data from a larger set of results, right? So we have the where object, all right? And you can use this in all the other commandlets. Again, this is the most used one. This is a perfect example, right? If I want to get all my stopped services, I can simply do this. Depends how you want to write it. You can put it like this. And these are my stopped services, right? Remember a few minutes ago, we ordered them by the status. Right now, I'm saying that inside this particular object, I want to find everything that has the status stopped, right? Or the working set is greater than 250 megabytes. Let's see. Let's also paste this here. There it is, right? Because an object contains a lot of information that you can actually query in. Next, the other one is select object. And this is again a very cool thing, because again, from the process, right? When you get a big object, right, which contains a lot of data, maybe I don't want to keep all of the data inside my object. All I only want are certain information from that specific object, right? So I can go and say, get all the processes. Once you get those, pass that as an input to the select objects commandlet, and in the select object, I want only to show me the process name, the ID, and the working set. And as you can see, it's a little bit different at what you saw in the beginning with get process, right? Because get process by default shows you a lot of information, right? So get process shows you your handles, your npm, blah, 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 your CPU, the ID, and so forth and so on, right? But I can only select certain data out of that specific object, right? And this is how you manipulate objects. Apart from that, when you have pipelines, again, I love pipelines. When you have pipelines, you can actually paste 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever number of commandlets you want. As an example, let's say I want to get my print spooler service. I want to see if it's stopped, and if it's stopped, I want to restart the service, right? So these are 3 specific actions that I need to do. So let's start. The first commandlet is to get our service, right? The name of the service contains print, right? To contain something, you use this, right? And I have the print notify, which is stopped, and print workflow. So these 2 services are actually stopped right now, right? So these 2 ones, I want them restarted, right? Now, remember, we need to use the where object commandlet, right? So, where is the where object? Here, blah, 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 blah. And on the where object, we had 2 options. Let's say the status, right? Okay, and I need to type here where object status. Sorry, I'm showing with my hand. Where status, right, equals. I'm going to talk about this a little bit later. stopped, right? And now it's only showing me the two stopped processes. Good, and I want to restart them. So how do you do that? We pass another pipeline and say, please restart my service. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, this is fine. These processes actually are something I don't want to say about this. But again, this is how you actually, and you see, one worked, one didn't work. It's another, that's another discussion. But this is how you chain multiple commands, and in one single line you can do 3 operations. That's amazing. Of course, if you want, you can also create custom commandlets, right? Or functions, as you want to tell them. But I'm going to get into that a little bit later on. Now, let's back down a little bit, right? We understood that PowerShell is a commandlet, or how do you want to call a command-centric scripting language, right? Back in the day, everybody called them functions, right? So it's a function-based scripting language. And the most powerful thing you can do with it is to actually learn the pipelines, to chain multiple commands, to have a much simpler, nicer, easier to read code. And apart from that, we learned how to use those commandlets, where to search for them, and where to get more information. Good. Now we need to go a step back a little bit and learn about variables and data types, right? So when we talk about variables, these are used to store and manipulate your data inside PowerShell, right? You need to understand how variables and data types work, because this is critical for your scripting success. So let's look a little bit at the variables first, and various data types that are supported. Now, in PowerShell, technically, you don't need to clearly define a variable or its data type, right? For example, I can have a variable here, let's call it like users or user, and I can say this is John, right? Now PowerShell will automatically know that this is a string. Now, how do you declare variables? This is actually quite easy. It's the $, the name of the variable, then the equal sign, and put whatever you want there, right? Good. So as mentioned, PowerShell already knows this is a string. If I do, for example, the age of John, which is 25, PowerShell will know that this is an integer, right? And the same manner, for example, if I have a price for a certain product, I can type 9.99, for example, and PowerShell will know that this is float or double data types. These are used for more precise fractional number calculations, right? But again, you don't need to clearly specify it. One other data type are the Boolean types, right? For example, let's say that I am Alex is true, or for example, I am John, it's false. So these are Boolean types. You can also store an array. An array is defined by comma, right? So this is an ordered collection of values, and this allows you to store multiple items in a single variable. And each item in this array has an index that represents its position, right? So for example, let's say I'm going to do a numbers variable, and I will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, if I want to write host my numbers, I want to take position 3. Okay, and if I write position 3 is number 4. Why is that? Because position 0, the initial position, is actually 1. Position 1 is 2. Position 3 is position 2 it's 3, position 3 it's 4, and position 4 it's 5. So the position of the array starts from 0, right? Good. Next we have hash tables, which are also known as associative arrays or dictionaries. These are storing key value pairs, and it allows you to retrieve values based on their corresponding keys, right? So for example, let's build a hash table. Let's build a hash table for this person here, right? A hash table always starts with @ right? And then let's make it nicely. Let's put the name will equal John. You need to put this every time, and let's say his age is 25, and let's close an array. Then this is how you present a hash table. Again, as mentioned, if you want to assign a certain value to a variable, you need to use the assignment operator as equals, followed by the desired variable. But variable expansion allows you to include the value of a variable within the string. So, for example, I have my user here, which is John, right? Good. I want to say something like, let's take another variable, or let's call it message. And this will be, hi, my name is user, and I will type it here. And then I want to write on the host the message. And if I hit play, hi, my name is John. By the way, this is a nice way, or a simple way on debugging your code. I always use the write host commandlet. This is the most useful for me. Each and every time I want to debug something, I want to see what's stored in the variable or what is the output of a certain variable. I always use the write host. I recommend everybody to do this. It's the most easy way to see what's happening inside your code. So, as mentioned, you can store variables inside other variables, or actually call them inside your variables, right? Now, we also need to talk a little bit about variable scopes. Now, understanding variable scopes is critical when you write PowerShell scripts for effective data management. Now, this defines the visibility and lifetime of variables throughout your script, right? And you have multiple scopes. You have a global scope, which allows your variables to be accessible throughout the entire script. You have also the script scope, and that specific variable is only available in your current script, right? So for example, if your script calls another script, then that variable will only be readable and present inside your primary script, not the second one. You can also have function scopes. So a certain variable can be available and accessed only inside that specific function, and outside it you won't be able to read it or do anything else with it. And you also have your local scopes, and these are actually variables within a specific block or loop, right? For example, for each loop or something like that, right? So the default scope in PowerShell is local scope, which actually refer to variables which are defined within a specific script block or function, and these are only accessible within the scope which they are defined, right? So for example, let's take my example here that I have. Let's say I have this right here. I want to paste, I want to do a new one. So I have here my function, right? I have my local variable, which says hello local scope, and I can write this here. I can call my function, right? But if I write, I pasted something else, but if I try to see what's in this local variable outside that function, guess what? Let's hit play. And as you can see, you only have hello local scope. This won't work, right? Because we should have actually two statements here, right? This won't work because this variable was only present and defined inside your function. Next, let's have a look a little bit at the script code, script scope. So these variables are accessible throughout the script file and refer to the script scope. And these are accessible for any script block or function, right? And it's actually not that hard to explain. So let's copy the code. Now you see a little bit of a difference between the previous one. Again, you have my function. Again, you have a script variable inside your function. You call my function and you also write your script variable. What's the difference here? The initial variable was declared before your function. And if I hit play, you will have actually two responses. The first response is when you called your function that you defined previously. The second response is this one here, where you write, where you use the write host commandlet, and because this is outside of the script block, it also appears here. See, so this is the difference. The next scope, the global scope, can be accessed from anywhere within your PowerShell sessions, including multiple script files. And these are retained for the duration of the PowerShell session, right? To declare a global variable, this is a little bit different, not so much. The only difference here, you see that you have your global variable, right? This is the primary thing here, global variable, right? Again, this will output the same thing, but if in my session I'm going to call another script and I will choose this variable will be accessible throughout the whole session. And last but not least, the private scope is only available within a module. And this cannot be accessed or modified outside of the module, right? And we'll reach the part where we'll create modules, right? So as we can see, there is a PowerShell module called my module, and the variable defined as private variable. When you declare a variable with private, this will only be accessible within the scope of that module which is defined. So you cannot access it or modify it from the outside, right? Using private ensures the variable is contained within the module and does not interfere with other parts of the PowerShell session or modules. And hello private scope is assigned to the variable here. This means that the value, its value, it's this string here. Then the module defines a function called my function, which will write this variable to the console. But again, if you call this module with this specific function, you can never edit that variable outside it. PowerShell also provides a set of automatic variables with predefined scopes, such as PS item, or I think PS script root, PS command path. These variables have specific purposes, and their scope is determined by the context in which they are used. So, for example, if I'm going to use this PS item, right? Let's close this one here, and let's delete everything here. And if I write host ps item and right host ps script root and right host ps command path. Now if we hit play, of course you don't have anything because I need to save my file. Okay, save my file, save it on the desktop. I'm going to say hello, and if I hit enter, there you go, you have your ps item hello.ps1, ps script root is on my desktop, command path for where this script is executed is this one. Another example of automatic variable is the ps version table, which holds information about the current PowerShell version, right? This can be accessed from anywhere within a script or function without the need of any special declaration, right? So for example, I can write host ps version table and let's say ps version, right? Yes, please save it, and this is my ps version here. So you have multiple other types of variables like this. You can search the web for them, and I think it will help you. Good. Now let's jump a little bit through operators and expression. Now PowerShell, remember we talked about this a few minutes ago. So PowerShell includes a plethora of operators and expressions that enable you to perform a variety of operations and calculations within your scripts. You need to understand how to use these operators and construct expressions, and this is a critical thing for PowerShell in order to have your scripts work fine. So let's start with arithmetic operators. Now, this enables you to perform mathematical calculations or on numerical values. So for example, if I have my, let's delete everything here. Actually, I want to do a new file. Let's say sum will be 5 plus 3. And if I want to write host my sum, it's 8. Next one is subtraction. Of course, if I do here 5 minus 3, you'll have to. Next is multiplication, right? So we can actually multiply this, and you'll have 15. Division is the next one. I think you'll have a boolean here. Yep. Okay. Modulo. This returns the remainder after division. So this is %. 2, of course. And that's pretty much it. Next, we need to talk about assignment operators. These enable you to simplify variable assignment while also performing calculations, right? So you have your compound assignment operators. These assignment operators provide a convenient way to modify variables and perform mathematical operations on them in a single step. For example, we can use the plus equal operator to append values to an array, and the minus equal operator can be used to subtract a value from a variable. Now, I have a PowerShell example here, which, because it's a little bit of writing to do, and I don't want to waste the time with this. So let me copy and paste here. So let's say your initial variable is 10. Then I add 5 more to the initial value. I subtract 3. I multiply with 2. I divide with 4. I compute the remainder with 2. I increase the value with 1. I decrease the value with 1. So let's see the final number. This is 10. And probably it makes sense, right? If I want to comment all the lines here, by the way, if you want to comment a line, you just use the hashtag at the beginning and it will comment everything. So let's do it step by step. First, you add 5, your number is 15. I subtract 3, 12. I multiply by 2, 24. I divide by 4, it's 6. I divide by 2, you have 0. I increase the value by 1, your value is 1. I decrease the value by 1, and now you have 0. Hopefully pretty simple to understand. Next, we need to have a look over our comparison operators. Now, PowerShell includes several comparison operators for comparing values and performing conditional operations. I only talked about the most commonly used comparison operators in PowerShell, but there are many more out there in case you need. So you would think that checking with equal it work, but apparently not. In PowerShell, you need to use the equal sign, so the equal operator, sorry. So for example, let's say I have a name or a number. Let's say my number is 5. Let's say I have a result here equals number equal 5, and write host result, and the output would be true because my number is equal to 5. If we want to check something if it's not equal, we use the NE, right? So if I put here minus NE, and let's say it's not equal to 3, of course this will be again true. Now, if you want to check if something is greater than something else, let's say we put here GT, so greater than, and of course 5 is greater than 3. If I want to check if something is less than, we put LT. This will be false because 5 is much higher than 3, of course. Next, you have greater than or equal to. So again, greater, you had GT, right? So 5 is greater than 3 and it works. But you also have GE, which is greater than and equal to. And for example, if I put 3 here, it will be, this is true because 5 is greater than 3. If I put 5, it will be true because it's also equal. But if I put 6, it will be false. Good. On the same manner, you have less than or equal to, right? So let's see, less. And of course, 6 is less. Let's put 5. And of course, it's also true because it's equal. And you have 4. And 4 is definitely not less than 5. And of course, this is false. Good. Next, we have the not like or negated wildcard matching, which checks if a string does not match to a specified wildcard pattern, right? So for example, let's copy my example here. If I put it something like this, my name is John, and I want to see if my name is not like something that starts with M, and it's true, right? Next, we have the match, which is actually a regular expression matching, which performs a regular expression match on a string. Regarding regular expressions, this is a much more complicated topic. I'm not sure if it makes sense to talk about it, especially in a PowerShell for beginners tutorial, right? So this is maybe something more advanced. So let's get the match. So for example, I have my text here. The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. Good. Now, if my text matches brown, I will say that we found a match. Else, I'm going to say that I didn't find brown in the text. And of course, we found a match. The quick brown fox. Not match is exactly as you assume. So let's say I'm searching for black, I don't have a black dog, I don't have a black fox, right? So, or do you have? No. Yeah, so that's fine. And next you have contains. Contains checks if an array contains a specific value, right? So again, let's do the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If my variable contains the number 3, I will output the number 3 is present in the array. So again, minus contains and the value you want to search for. Not contains is exactly like you assume. It checks if the array doesn't contain a specific value. So for example, let's put 6. And the number 3 actually is not present in the number 6. Let's modify it so it's more understandable. Is not present in the array. Sorry, actually I forgot to put not contains. Okay, and this will be here, right? So it's a good output. We have multiple other variables here. You can check the book, but these are some of the most common ones. Let's quickly jump through logical operators. So there are 3 logical operators in PowerShell: and, or, and not. You can use these operators to perform logical operations or conditions or values. So here's a brief explanation. So the AND operator performs a logical AND between 2 conditions. It returns true if both conditions are true, or false otherwise, right? So let's take a little bit of a sample code here. So let's say I have 2 variables, A and B, 5 and 10. So let's say, right, this is with AND. If the first variable is greater than 0, again, not equal, greater than 0, then this is true. And if B is less than, not equal, less than 15, then both conditions are true, or at least one condition is false. Because AND, you need for both conditions, for both things that you check here, you need them both to be true. And if I hit enter, of course, it works like a charm, right? The OR operator performs a logical OR operation between the conditions. It returns true if at least one of the conditions is true, or false if both conditions are false. So, for example, if we modify a little bit the code, we have a list one condition is true. What condition is false here? The second one. Because the second one checks if B is greater than 15, which is not. But the first one is true, so then you have a list one condition is true, and you don't go on the other side, right? The NOT operator performs a logical NOT operation on a condition. So it negates the result of the condition, and this will return true if the condition is false, and false if the condition is true. I know it might sound a little bit tricky, but actually it makes sense. For example, I have my variable here, which is 5. If my variable does not equal 10, I know you can use a different operator. I know this, but again, this is much better. So if your variable is not equal with 10, then your condition is false. Else, your condition is true, right? So this will return true if the condition is false, and false if the condition is true. Good. Now, let's talk about string operators. You also need your operators to handle your strings, right? Because it's not only mathematical operations that you do with PowerShell, right? So there are several string operators in PowerShell that allow you to perform various operations on strings. The first one is the concatenation or the add. I'm going to copy paste here. So let's say I have two strings, hello and world, and if I want to join them, I will have hello world. You might wonder what's this. This is a space, because if I don't use this space here and I only concatenate the two ones, I will have hello world without any space in it, right? Next is the join operator. Now this is technically used to join an array of strings into a single string using a specified separator, right? So for example, if we take this code here, we have hello world and exclamation mark, right? And I want to join this array here, and I want to join it with a space, right? So if I put this, I will have hello world space exclamation mark. Next, you have your substring operator, which is used to extract a portion of your string based on the specific start index and length, right? So actually this is very useful. I've done this many times. So let's say I have my string here, which is hello world. In my hello world, I want to have the first 5 substrings, right? So remember, I said the index starts with 0, right? So 0 is hey, it's H, 1 is A, 2, 3 is L, 4 is O, and you also have a space here, right? So you will have your output hello. The next one is the replace operator. Again, a very useful operator that I've used many times. If you want to replace something in a string, this is actually very simple to do. Again, I have my hello world string and I want to replace the world part with universe. And if I hit play, I have hello universe. And again, it's very simple. You create another variable, and in that variable, you take your first variable, the hello world, and you use the replace operator, and you tell it what to replace with what to replace it with. Pretty easy. Next, you have your like, which is used for pattern matching using wildcard characters. Let me copy the example. And again, I have my hello world string. If in my string I find something like world, but again, I don't care what's before it or after it, I just want to know if that specific string contains the word world, I do it with like, right? For example, if I don't put this here, my string does not contain, because it takes from the beginning, so it must start with world, and in this case it doesn't. Let's try with hello, and we don't care what's after it, and of course it contains the world, or in this case hello, and we don't care what's after it. Or the other way around, let's say I have, or actually not, it makes sense. I think you get the point, right? My mind is a little bit wonky at the moment. Good. Next, you have your match operator, which is used for matching patterns using regular expressions. So again, this is more a little bit of an advanced part of PowerShell regarding regular expressions. Now, I won't get into details, but if your string matches world, right, so W something from A to Z plus LD, so world, then the string matches the pattern. I really do suggest you search on Google regarding regular expressions, because this is a little bit of a trickier topic and I don't want to cover it in this video or in this book. I don't think you are going to use it very often, depends on the level of scripting you are going to do. For a normal IT professional, I don't think you'll use it that much. I think the rest of the operators will do just fine for you. But for somebody with much more experience, this is a lifesaver, right? Good. Now let's talk a little bit about control flow statements. Now, these are essential programming constructs that allow you to control the execution flow of your code based on certain conditions, right? And it might sound a little bit, oh my God, what's this control flow statements and stuff? It's the inevitable if, else, blah, 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 or switch statements, right? Or for loop, a while loop, and so forth and so on. So let's start with the most simple one, if, right? We already had some examples before, right? So I want to check if my number is greater than 0. And when you do an if statement, it's actually quite easy. You put if, you start your parentheses, you put your whatever you want here, you put your operator, and let's say is greater than equal, then blah blah, you close, and then you open your brackets, right? So pretty easy, pretty straightforward. This is an if statement, it works. Now let's go to the switch statement, which is used to evaluate a variable or expression against a series of cases, right? So it allows you to perform different actions based on the match case, right? So what is this switch control flow? Okay, give me a second. Good. Now, I have my fruit, which is equal to apple. This is how you start a switch. If my fruit in that specific scenario is apple, I will write to the host that this is an apple. If the fruit is equal to a banana, then I will write that this is a banana. And if default, right, if it's different than anything else, I will just write it's a different fruit. Now if I say here this is a banana, then I will have it's a banana. Why is this useful? Because if you have multiple cases, right, you know that you have 2 or 3 or 4 cases, it's much simpler to do a switch than multiple ifs, right? Like if my specific output is equal to 1, and then do that. If my specific output it is equal to 3, if my specific blah 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 blah. Too many ifs. Do a switch statement, much easier, saves a ton of time, and you will have much faster results. Then let's go to the for loop, which allows you to iterate over a set of values or elements for a specific number of times, right? So if I go this, and if I hit play, what am I doing here? I'm initializing my variable with 1. I am increasing my variable each and every time my for loop goes on. And when my loop is less or equal than 5, I stop. So let's do it like this. My first iteration is 1 because my initial iteration is 1. So I'll write the host. Then we do a check. Is it less than equal than 5? Yes, it is. Then I increase. Next, I do an iteration 2. I check again. Is it less than equal than 5? Yes, it is, and so forth and so on until it reaches 5. Then this condition is no longer true, and the for loop stops. This is particularly useful. I know this is something that's been used very long times, but for loops are actually quite good. I think we also have some more examples down below. Then you have your while loop, which executes a code of block as long as the specified condition remains true. So let's do it like this. It's a little bit the same as for depends how you place the condition. But while this condition, so while the counter is less than 5, I increase the counter. It makes sense. Is that it does the same? It's less than, not less than and equal to. So that's why your iteration stops at 4. The do while loop is similar to the while loop, but it executes the block at least once before checking the condition. The difference is that while checks the condition first, then executes the block. Do while executes the code once and then raise the output. But again, the result will be actually the same, because we do something, we increase the counter while the counter is less than or equal than 5. Actually, I don't know if I can place this here. Actually, I can. So if we have a look here, you see it's a little bit the same, right? Because you still have your while, right? It's just at the bottom, and you have your do at the beginning, right? So pretty easy stuff, easy to remember, easy to understand. Next, you have your for each loop, which iterates over each element in a collection or array. This is something that we are going to use very frequently in PowerShell, because again, in PowerShell you usually work with objects and arrays, right? So for example, I have my array here, apple, banana, and orange, and for each fruit in these fruits, or for each element, let's say like this, for each element, let's say fruit is this, and I have apple, orange, and banana, blah blah. When you start to do a for each, you need to specify a different variable which will hold the information, because in this variable you will start to get each and every element of your array, right? So your element is actually stored each and every time you do a for each, right? That's why you need another variable. You don't need to define it first, to just place a different name here and it works like a charm. The break statement, which is the next one, is used to exit or terminate a loop or switch statement, right? So for example, let's play like this. So for each number in 1 to 10, if the number is equal to 5, I will break the code. Breaking the loop, and pong. Quite easy, right? You just hit the break where you want to break the code, and that's it. A continuous statement is the other way around. It's used to skip the remaining code in a loop iteration and move to the next iteration. So if I want to skip number 3, right, because I want from 1 to 5, I want to continue. So even if this condition is true, I will skip, right, and continue to the next one. So this actually continues in case you do something goes wrong in your code. And the return statement, which I think is our last one. Oh no, not our last one, sorry, we still have one or two more. Your return statement is used to exit a function or script block and return a value, right? Usually inside your script blocks, you are going to have a return value, right? So let's say I have a function multiply numbers a and b, right? I want to return that value, right? Because when I do my function, let's do it like this. If I hit play, of course I will have my result is 15, right? And I put here in a variable my function, the variables a and b, so 5 and 3, and the result will be result. If I don't return anything, and actually I'm not sure why, okay, if I don't return anything, I won't have a result. Remember what we talked a little bit about variables, right, and their scopes. If you don't return anything in your function, you won't have your answer. So if you want anything from your function, you need to do a return. Actually, I know I did wrong, and you need to have your return. Otherwise, your function won't say nothing. The exit statement is the next one. It's used to terminate the current script or exit the current session. Now, it is similar to the return statement in functions, but operates on the entire script or session. Now, when encountered, the exit statement immediately stops the script execution, and any code after it will not be executed. And this can be useful in situations where you need to prematurely stop a script or exit from a specific code branch based on certain conditions. Now, I don't want to run this code here I can actually write host blah 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 blah. Now I don't want to, or actually let's run it. If I run this code, you see, starting the script and exiting the script, or actually I don't think this is a good example. Something is wrong. Interesting. Let's put the condition to be true. Okay, and if I hit enter, of course it wants to exit my code. Apparently this is my fault in the book. I actually needed to say that the condition is true in order to break the statement and to exit. So when you hit exit, you also exit from your IDE. I will hit cancel, and my code will stop. Good. Next we have the try and catch finally statement. Now this is more or less the preferred way of working with PowerShell by most IT professionals which have a long time in the business. I'm also a very big fan of try and catch, but I'm also a fan of the standard if-else statements. So the try-catch finally statement provides a structured way to handle errors and exceptions in your code. The try block contains the code that may throw an exception, right? And if any exception occurs during this timeline, it is caught and processed in the catch block, right? This allows for your graceful error handling and the execution of fallback code or error messages to the users in case you have something. The finally block, if present, will always execute regardless of whether an exception was caught or not, making it suitable for cleanup tasks. This construct is actually essential for creating robust scripts that can handle unexpected situations and maintain control flow efficiently, right? So let's have a little bit a look at this code. So again, I need to do it here. Let's say I have a code that will throw an exception, right? No such commandlet. This is pretty straightforward. I don't have a commandlet. I don't have a function which is called no such commandlet. I don't have anything in my code, and I'm trying to call this function, right? So in the catch phase of this, you have here, you can do multiple stuff. Of course, in this example, I'm only throwing an error, something like an error has occurred, blah, 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 blah. And I also have the finally statement, which allows me to clean up the code. So if I hit enter, you can see that by using $ and underscore, you can actually catch the error and output it to the user. So the term no such commandlet is not recognized as the name of blah, 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 blah. And then you clean up your code. I hope this is quite easy to understand. So each and every time you want to try something in your code, or you are not sure that something will work, I suggest using the try and catch method instead of the if method, or if the if method is actually quite hard to use in this case. It's not hard to use, you just need to know, say, for example, if my blah 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 variable which runs this command blah 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 blah, you can do that, but it's much trickier, right? You have a try, a catch, and much nicer, much cleaner. Good. Next, we have the trap statement, which is used to handle terminating errors that occur within a specific scope. So unlike try and catch, trap is not used for structured error handling, but rather for intercepting and responding to errors at the script level or inside the function or script block, right? When a terminating error is encountered, the trap block is executed, allowing you to log the error, perform cleanup actions, blah, blah. So it provides a way to catch the errors globally within a script, right? You don't need to do a try and catch block on your whole script, right? You just place it anywhere in your script, right? You don't need to explicitly wrap each section of the code within a try catch block. However, you need to know that the trap does not handle non-terminating errors. So for example, if you have, I don't know, a statement that number equals 5 and you don't have a number 5, that's not a terminating error. Terminating errors are something like this one, where you want to do a certain function which doesn't exist, right? I have here, so everywhere in your script, right, you can put here your trap. You can put it at the beginning, at the end, it doesn't matter. And for example, let's say in your script you want to get your item property, blah 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 blah, error action stop. So file not found, skipping, right? Because you got a trap. That's why you're doing something. And of course, I want to continue with my code, right? And to show you what's happening, right? But you see, this is global. You just write it once, and that's it. You can put it in a log. You can continue, of course, the execution of your code, but you can log it, right? If you have 3,000 errors inside your code, it's actually much simpler just to do a simple trap method. You put whatever you want to do it in your log file, and that's it. And last but not least, I think this is the until loop. Now, until loop is a type of loop that repeatedly executes a block of code until a specified condition evaluates to true. So it's a little bit different than while, right? So let's say my counter is 0 and I increase my counter. So I want to execute this code until my counter is greater and equal than 5. So there you go. I have my counter 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it's stopped. So once the condition becomes true, the loop terminates. That's why you don't see a counter 5, because it did the loop once again until this happened. So it's a little bit different than a while, but it works. It's probably not used that much, but I've used it a couple of times. So it depends on the situation. Good. Next, let's jump a little bit into functions. So PowerShell functions, like I showed you before, are fundamental concepts that allow you to organize and reuse code, right? If you have a certain code block that you want to use over and over again, it doesn't make sense to write it again and again and again and again in your script. You write a function, you call the function, everything is peachy, everything works nicely. Good. So again, this allows you to encapsulate a set of instructions in the named block, right? Making your code more modular and manageable. So how do you declare a function? Well, actually, it's quite easy. As you've seen before, we have a function, right? And let's say, or say hello, right? We open the brackets, and I want to say, right host, hello world, blah, blah. If I want to call the function, it's actually quite easy. You just say hello prom, and this works. This is how you call a function. You can also encapsulate a function inside a variable. So let's say this is my variable here, and I want to right host my variable param hello world. So you can either call the function directly or put your function inside a variable. Now, what is the structure? So functions consist of a set of statements enclosed with curly braces. Statements within the function define the logic and actions to be performed. For example, let's say I have another function, right? Another function multiply. Remember exhibit back in the day? Or I'm just old. Okay, cool. So I need to learn to code. There you go. So the result would be, I don't know, 2 times 3. Good. We can right host our result. right? And again, if I read, it won't show anything, right? Because I haven't called my function. If I call my function multiply and run the code, and there you go, that's 6. Again, you can also place your code inside the variable, and then I say multiply, and then I execute it, and there you go. By the way, F5 executes your code inside PowerShell. Much simpler. Good. Now, with functions, you can also have parameters. Now, parameters are placeholders that allow you to pass values inside your function. They can be optional or mandatory. You can define this. Different types of parameters, such as positional parameters and name parameters, can be defined. They are defined after the function name in parentheses, and they serve as placeholders for values that will be passed to the function when it's called. To ensure proper data validation, each parameter is assigned to a specific data type, such as a string, integer, or boolean. When the function is called, values for each parameter are provided, and these values are then used within the function to perform your specific tasks that you define. So by allowing users to customize the behavior of the function based on the input they provide, function parameters enable greater flexibility and reusability. Now, this is nothing new in the scripting world. We have functions and parameters for all types of scripting languages for ages, right? So it's nothing different with PowerShell. It's nothing new. It's nothing too modern, right? So I have my function add numbers, number 1 and number 2. I have a sum here, and I will write the whole. So, and if I want to call my function, it's actually quite easy. I can do, let's do it without a variable. So I want to do add numbers of, I don't know, 2, 3. And if I place the sum of 2 and 3 is 5, and that's how easy it is. Let's talk a little bit again about return values. Never forget about return. What I have here is a write host. This is just something that it's outputted to my console, just to be sure that I'm showing you what that function actually does. But this function means nothing. If you want to do something to compare or to see what really happened programmatically inside that function, you don't have anything now. So if you want to return the sum of this, you actually need to return the sum, right? You see, this is your return here, 5. Good. So I think we covered the basics of PowerShell more or less. There are maybe other concepts that I didn't show you here. Maybe there are some things that I didn't show you here that you will learn, but this is PowerShell. This is the scripted language. I never believe that a course will teach you your full values or all your scenarios, right? In general, scripting cannot handle all the scenarios that are out there in the world, right? So let's now go to the next chapter of the book, which is managing files and folders. I think managing files and folders and registry entries are two of the most used scenarios for scripting. Of course, people working in networking might want to come and stab me at the moment and say, look, Alex, we're also doing stuff with, I get it. From my experience as an IT professional, which is also working in the Windows environment and usually works a lot with Windows systems and does this kind of stuff, these for me are the most used scenarios inside the scripting area, right? So let's dive and see how you can manage files and folders. So let's start by understanding how to navigate the file system and let's try to understand the file system hierarchy. So drives serve as a root level containers for files and folders in the file system, right? So each drive, such as the C or D or E or whatever letter you have assigned, represents a storage device or a logical volume. You can use your PowerShell get ps drive command, and you can obtain a list of available drives and their properties, right? So for example, let's use this get ps drive, and if I hit enter, these are all my drives there. Of course, I have my C, I have my D, but you also have your registry. Yes, you can also use that. So these are all my drives and all the properties. You can navigate to a specific directory by using the set location. I think we showed this in the beginning, right? So you can set location, okay, minus path, and let's say, I don't know, C users, user documents. There you go. And now my location is set because I had C users, and now I'm in my documents, right? The next commandlet is get child items, which lists all the files and directories within a given path. To see the contents of the documents directory, for example, we use get child item path, and again I'm going to copy paste the path here because I'm too lazy to type. And these are all everything that I have here. GTA and address. Okay, so I have everything here. Good. So again, if you want to get all the files and folders, I already showed you that. But let's say I want to filter files by extension, right? So let's say I want to get all the child items in my path, right? Let's copy it here. And I want to filter it to show me all the text files. And I have only my example.txt. You can also use wildcards when listing files and folders, because these are powerful symbols that allow you to perform pattern matching, right? This is one example for txt. You can also list all the folders starting with project, for example. I don't have none, but let's see if I have Adobe. I think I have. Oh, sorry. Okay, let's put here Adobe. Yes, I have my Adobe folder here. You can also always sort and format the output. So for example, let's get all the child items that we have in our documents folder, and we are going to use the pipeline, and we are going to use the sort object, and we are going to give it the property, right? So we can sort via the name or length or less write time and so forth and so on, right? Pretty easy to do. I think we can also, if I remember correctly, yes, I have added this into the book, so we can also use multiple, give me a second. Good. So we can use multiple properties: name, last write time, and length, right? Now, what you are going to use pretty often when working with folders, maybe, or when you're running your scripts, is to actually display your path information, right? So you need to extract specific path information when you work with files and folders in PowerShell to understand the location or parent directories or file extensions and so forth and so on. We can use the get item commandlet again. So if I copy paste this here, we are going to use the get item minus path, right? I'm not sure if I have this in my documents, so let's see if I have my example. Yes, I do have it, and this is the full path of the file. You can also extract the parent directory where a file is present, right? So we can split path. We can use the split path commandlet, and we can use it like this. And this is the root directory of your specific file, right? Or you can obtain the file name if you desire, right? So what did we do here? We got the full name of this specific file. So you are probably wondering, so let me try to explain a little bit. Maybe I got a little bit ahead of myself. So if I'm going to go here, right, you have an object. In this object, you have multiple things. You have your mode, your last write time, the length, meaning the size of the file, the name of the file, right? So what I did here, see, you can actually get something from the object by encapsulating it into parentheses and use the dot and select your full name, right? Or I can get my length. Sorry. Actually, if I see here, let's see, full name length, right? So let's get this, it's 18. Or maybe I want to get the, let's see, what else do we have? We have the directory exists, we have the extension, which is .txt, right? So this is how you can access stuff inside your object, right? And I think I wanted to do the name, if I remember correctly. And this is the name of your file, right? Now, let's jump over and understand how you can create files and folders. So to create files and folders, we are going to use the new item commandlet, which is quite easy. For example, I want to create in my C drive, I want to create a new directory, right? And it's easy. You have the new item commandlet. You need to define your item type, which in this case is directory, and the path where you want to create it. And there you go. Now if I go into my C drive, I will have new folder, there you go, which is empty, of course. If I want to create a new file, it's the same, but the item type is file and the path would be the previous one. So I'm going to create this here. And now I have an example.txt in my new folder. You can also write things in your file, right? For example, I have a string here, right? And I'm going to pipeline it into the out file commandlet, right? And I'm going to write hello world in this. And there you go. So with out file, you just need to specify the file path, and it will write whatever you give it to it, either a string, or you can also output CSV files with out file and so forth and so on. It's a very powerful commandlet. Now, if you want to rename a file, it's actually quite easy because you have the rename item commandlet, right? So, but let's say I have my C new folder. And let's say I have my example.txt and I want a new file.txt, and if I hit enter, I should have, yep, there we go, new file.txt. Everything is kept in place. If you want to delete files and folders, it's quite easy because you need to use the remove item, and again you need to tell him the path and what you want to delete. If we are going to put the example, so let's get this. I want to delete my example.txt. It's quite easy. You hit enter. Oh yeah, needs new file path. Sorry. Okay, my mistake here. Okay, there you go. And now it should be deleted. Yep, there you go. So it's deleted. So again, simple commandlet, remove item, specify the path, and you can also delete folders, right? Instead of the actual text file, you just give it the folder name, and you can also delete everything that's inside it by using the recurse property. So if you hit enter, now if you go to C, you won't have your new folder. See, that's pretty easy. So commandlets in general, when we are talking about registry files, you usually use the same commandlets. You just need to specify what you want to do with them, right? What item type you want, what do you want to delete, right? And PowerShell already knows it. You don't need to have extensive declarations or multiple commandlets to do the same operations. Now, if you want to copy files, it's quite easy actually, because you need to use the copy item commandlet. And now I don't have this here, but as an example, when you use the copy item, you have your initial path, what you want to copy, right? I need to copy this file into this destination, right? And you have your minus destination and your folder. Pretty straightforward, right? If you want to copy a folder, it's actually quite easy because, again, we need to use the recurse method like we used in the deletion. So what we are going to do is say copy item. The path will be actually my folder, right? So again, the same. Tell him the destination where you want to copy all your folder contents and hit the recurse method, and everything which is inside your folder will be copied. Now, apart from renaming, deleting, and so forth and so on, you can also move files. You can use the move item, right? So for example, you see it's more or less similar to the copy item commandlet, right? Because you have your initial path. So what you want to move, I want to move this file here to this destination here, right? And it's pretty straightforward. Now, I just want to do my directory, and I want to do my example.txt again here. Let's see if it's here. Where is it? There we go. So it's here. I'm not sure if I have everything in it. Let's put something, blah, 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 close. Thank you. Good. So now let's jump into the file attributes. So file attributes specify a file properties, such as if it's read-only or hidden or archived, or is it a system file, right? Now, the get item and set item commandlets in PowerShell allow you to change these attributes as needed, right? So the get item retrieves the object itself, and the set item property modifies the desired attributes, right? So let me copy the example we have in the book, right? So let me paste the new file here from the example, right? So first of all, I need to get my object, right? And then I'm going to pipeline it and say that I want to set the item property for this specific file here, that it's read only. There we go. And where are my properties? There we go. Sorry, value true. Okay, my bad. I want to save, bang, and now show more options, properties, and there you go, it's read only, right? You can also say that it's hidden, right? But with hidden, it's a little bit different. So it's going to look like this. So if I run this, of course, because I don't have it here. Okay, so give me a second. Example.txt. Good. And now, you see, it's hidden. We also need to talk a little bit about file permissions, right? So to access and give privileges to a certain user or groups of users for a specific file, these are all controlled by so-called permissions, right? You have the get ACL and set ACL commandlets in PowerShell, which allow you to manage the file permissions efficiently. So the get ACL retrieves the file access control list, right? And the set ACL modifies it. So for example, let me delete and let me do another text file example here, and I want to write something in it. So let me copy paste the script here. So what does this script actually do? Let me delete this. So first of all, we are getting the object, right? We need to get the item that we have. Next, we are going to pipeline this file into a new variable and say in this variable, please get the ACL, the access control list for this specific file. Then I want to create a new rule, and you have a new object, right? Inside this object, and also, yeah, there you go. Now looks much nicer. Inside this object, we are going to define system security ACL file system access rules, and I want to give the username on a specific domain full control on this specific file. Then again, under my ACL, right? So here I have the ACL. I want to modify it by using the add access rule and the rule I previously defined, right? And then we are going to set the rule on this specific ACL, right? There you go. And now let's go to properties, security, and there you go. I have full control. Next, let's have a look on how you can search by actual file content. Now, this is not a perfect method, right? You cannot search in all files. I had issues in the past, I think, with Java files. I'm not sure. I don't usually use this, but when I used it, it worked pretty more or less fine. So let's say I want to get all the files that contain a string, right? Let's say my pattern here is I don't know, this is Alex, right? I'm going to modify here. This is Alex, blah blah blah, right? Good. Actually, I'm going to create a new file just to show you that this actually searches, right? And I want to search in my new folder, right? So again, if you have a look, it's exactly like, it's again the get child item commandlet, right? I'm just using the pipeline to use the select string commandlet to search for a specific pattern, right? And I'm searching for this is Alex. If I hit enter, there you go. In my new folder, in this specific example.txt file, it found this is Alex, blah, 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 because this is the pattern we were searching for. So that's how easy it is to find. Now, let's jump to our next chapter, which is manipulating the Windows registry. So the Windows registry is a hierarchical database that stores configuration settings, options, and information about the operating system, hardware, software, user preferences, more or less everything. It's stored in the Windows registry. This is made up from keys and subkeys. So subkeys are more or less subfolders within the keys, and values hold the actual data or configuration settings. This is a necessary component of the Windows operating system, and this allows the operating system to function properly and allow applications to store and retrieve important data. Well, in terms of applications, actually, you have two ways of storing data, is either in the registry or files. Depends from developer to developer. From my perspective, storing settings in the registry is much cleaner, much nicer, much easier, and much simpler to modify, especially for enterprise needs. So we need to understand the registry. So let's go to regedit. Cool. And now this is opened. Let me try to minimize everything that I have here. So again, this is similar to a file system, and this is marked out of 5 main root keys. The H key class is root, current user, local machine, users, and current configuration. The class's root contains information about file associations, OLE objects, and COM components. The current user stores preferences and configuration settings for the current logged in user. The local machine contains settings and preferences and data for the local machine, including hardware, operating system, and installed software. The users holds user profiles and settings for all the users on the system, right? And current config contains information about the current hardware profile used by the system. So each subkey contains a plethora of subkeys and values that contain configuration data, right? So in PowerShell, again, to read a specific data, a specific registry key, it's actually quite simple because again, we use the getItem property commandlet because it works the same for registry keys. The difference is how you define it. So first of all, you need to actually define your registry path. If you look a little bit closely here, in my regedit, I have my, let's go to, what is this? Local machine, software, Microsoft, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so inside your registry keys, you have local machine, software, classes, right? But when I define it in PowerShell, I have this here to indicate the root, and in this case is local machine. So you have a HKCU for current user, something like this, HKLM, which we already have it, right, for local machine. What else do we have? HK classes root. Okay, and you get the point, right? So let's say I want to navigate through this. Let's see. So what's this? Software Windows current version. Let me paste this here. And here you have your common files directory, which is C program files, common files, right? So first I marked the subkey. Next, I marked the value I want to get, right? Because you have multiple values here. And then to retrieve the actual value of what you want there, I used the getItem property value. The path is this one that I marked here. The name of that specific registry is this one. And I write to the host the value. And the value is C program files, common files, right? Which is correct. Let me try to make this a little bit smaller. There you go. So this is it. Now, when working with registry, you might often need to retrieve specific keys and values based on your requirements. Now, PowerShell provides various techniques to retrieve specific registry information. Let's say I want to retrieve all of the subkeys of a specific registry key because I need to filter something there, right? So again, I'm going to my Windows current version and I want to enumerate all my subkeys there. Now, for subkeys, I'm using the getChildItem, not getChildItem property, because I want to enumerate all the subfolders, right? Let's consider them subfolders. I want to enumerate them. Remember how we did with files. The exact same way we are doing with registry. The difference is the path. This is the only difference here, right? And then remember for each. What did we say? For each subkey, for each variable that we find in this subkey's value or variable, we are going to write to the host, to the console, these are the subkeys. So if I hit enter, there you go. These are all the subkeys you have inside your current version. This is account picture, action center, advertising info, app management, app paths, and so forth and so on. Cool. So now let's have a look also how we modify registry values. So in PowerShell, we use the set item property. Remember, if we use the get item property, now we are going to use the set item property commandlet to modify registry values, right? So it allows you to update the value of a specific registry key or create a new value if it doesn't exist. So let's say under my current user, let's go under current user. And let's see, I have software, Mozilla, Firefox, default browser agent, and current default is Firefox. We want to set the new value to be Chrome, right? So what do? Again, we need to clearly define the path, again, like with files. Then the value name that we want to change, which is current default. I'm going to set a new variable, which will hold the new value, which is Chrome. And then we simply use the set item property and tell him go to this path, check this value name here, current default, and add this new value Chrome. So if I go, I hit refresh, now it's Chrome. I want to put it back to Firefox. Cool. And see, that's how easy it is to modify registry values. If you want to create new registry keys and values, we need to use the new item property, because the set item property expects that your current value, your current registry key is there. If you want to create a new one, then you need to use the new item property and new item. So first of all, let's say, for example, I'm not sure if I did this example. So let's see, software, my app. No, I don't have it, right? So under software, so current user software, I want to create a new folder called my app. It's just an example. Then I want to create a new value, a string value, which is going to be setting, a random setting. And the data that will be there, it will be enabled. So there are two steps you need to do with this. First of all, you need to actually create the item, the subfolder, right? Under current user software, you need to create a my app subfolder. Then you need to create the new item. So the new item property is the one who is going to create that specific value. So if I hit enter, if I hit refresh, now I have my app and I have my setting, which is enabled. So you need to be very careful when handling registry operations. Now, when you use the set item property commandlet, the commandlet will create the value if the key is already present. So for example, right here in software my app, I want to create a new key. If I hit enter, everything will be fine. I hit refresh, my default value is here. But the problem is with set item property, that set item property does not create the subfolder. So if I want, for example, in my app 2, which is a subfolder or registry key that I don't have, see, if I hit enter, you will have an error because set item property will create your value. So you need to make sure that your registry key is there via try and catch method, via if else statement, however you want. Be very careful when working with registry. Now, if I want to update a registry path, I already showed you, but what if I want to remove a registry value? Well, it's actually quite easy. In my app, let's say I have this setting here, and to remove it, again, pretty straightforward. Remove item property, commandlet, give him the path and the value name which you want to delete. Enter, and now, bam, it's gone. So I don't want to go into more details regarding registry keys. You can find more examples in the ebook. Some of them are reoccurring, like with ACLs, with folders. You can do the same with registry. So I want to jump to our next chapter that I want to cover in regards of the WMI. So VMI, as I called it, so the Windows Management Instrumentation. Now this is a powerful management technology that enables administrators and developers to retrieve information and manage Windows-based systems. So this is useful in PowerShell because it allows you to automate administrative tasks, collect user data, monitor system health, and you can perform very complex system management tasks with ease by leveraging the VMI in PowerShell scripts, which will save you time and effort. Now VMI enables you to access a wide range of system data. You can also remotely execute commands on multiple machines, and you can create actual powerful monitoring and reporting solutions. So VMI classifies and organizes resources into namespaces and classes. So namespaces are the logical containers that group together related classes, right? Like a folder. It's a folder which contains other folders, or not really folders, it contains the classes which execute, right? So the classes represent the actual system resources with which we can interact with, right? So you need to understand the WMI namespace and classes for using VMI in your PowerShell scripts. So for this, I want to open my PowerShell here. Let me open a new instance. So to retrieve a list of VMI namespaces, you can use the get VMI object commandlet. I'm not sure. Let me see if I still have this tool. Cool. So I downloaded a little tool called VMI Explorer. I want to show you how it is. So it's quite easy to use-ish. So first of all, VMI, I told you it allows you to remotely connect to your local computers. Now your computer, it's dot. If you want to connect to your local VMI, it's dot, click connect, and now you have all your namespaces. I want to show you in a visual way how this works. So in your root, you have different namespaces. You have your app.v, your sim, CLI, default, directory, and so forth and so on, right? This contains classes that you can use to call and retrieve data. For example, let's say I want to look for my processor name, and this is in SimV2. You double click, and right here you should have VMI Win32, and it should be at P processor, PNP device, printer, processor. This is your class. If you double click it, it will show you the instances, right? I only have one CPU, so this is CPU 0, and it will tell you all the necessary details: the architecture, the availability, the caption for the specific device, the class name, the description, the clock, the LT. So everything that the OS knows about this processor, it will tell you. So this is what VMI is. You have your folders or namespaces where you keep your classes, and these classes will show you the necessary information. By the way, this VMI Explorer is free. You can download it on GitHub. Maybe it helps you. It also shows you different properties that each class have, right? Or methods that you can use. You can actually reset or set the power state to that specific processor. You can query. Actually, let me try to give you, so we can copy this query here, put it here, execute, and there you go. So this is how it works, right? Consider like database. I want to select everything from this specific class or table where the device ID is CPU 0. And there you go, it works. It's a very nice tool. I recommend everybody to use it. So now back to our PowerShell. If I want to first find out all my namespaces that are present, you can use the getVMI object. Namespace, of course, is root. The class, we put it right here with namespace and select name. If we hit enter again, as we saw in the VMI Explorer, we have subscription default, blah, 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 blah. Now, to explore VMI classes with a specific namespace, let's take the example I took with SimV2. So again, now we are getting the sim class for this specific namespace, and again we are pipelining it, and we tell PowerShell for each object show me the class name. And these are all the classes, and of course right here should be processor. I think I jumped past it actually. Okay, so they are not sorted out. Yeah, so this is where you find your processor, right? So remember how we did the select from blah, 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 blah here? With PowerShell, you can use get VMI object class Win32 processor. And there you go. You have some small information here. The caption, the device ID, and so forth and so on. So before you begin to work with VMI in PowerShell, make sure that VMI is enabled and that you have the necessary rights. So let's walk through the process of enabling and verifying VMI access on your system. So first of all, we need to see if this particular service, because this is a service, we need to see if it's enabled. So let's use the get service commandlet with this name, because this is the name of the VMI, Windows Management. And let's see the status. So it's running, it's fine. Let's see if we have administrative action, administrative access to the VMI. So get VMI object, the class we want to use, the operating system. And let's do this. Yes, we have, because otherwise you would have an error here. To work effectively with VMI, you must first understand the classes and their properties. So to get a list of VMI classes, again, we can use the get VMI object list. And these are literally all your classes that you have everywhere. And to access properties of a VMI class, let's take a little bit an example here with the computer system. So again, I'm getting the VMI object and the class I'm using, the Windows 32 computer system, and I want to find out the name, the manufacturer, and the model, right? This is the name, this is the manufacturer, and this is the model. If we go Windows 32 computer system, I think this should be here. Computer system, and if I go to instances, you see you have multiple properties. That's what's up with this dot. You have your name, you have your manufacturer, you have your model. You can also get your computer system dot, and you have everything here. For example, boot time, boot status, bam, or you can get your description. Let's say description, right? Param. Or I want to get my admin password status, right? Pam F5 3, and here it explains to you what 3 means. 3, it's safe. 1 is other, 2 is unknown, 4 is warning, 5 is critical, 6 is non-recoverable. That's what I love about this tool, because if I want to find something, I don't need to search the web. I can just search here. I have also the explanations. I really do recommend you use it. Good. So This code retrieves your information about your computer system using the VMI class Windows 32 computer system. The getVMI object, this is the commandlet in PowerShell that allows you to retrieve VMI objects based on specific criteria. In this case, we are specifying the class parameter with the value Win32 computer system to target the computer system information. The returned object, because you are returning an object, again, because we are running in PowerShell, is assigned to the variable here, which allows us to access the properties. And as I showed you, you can access whatever properties you want to obtain specific information about the computer system. Now, remember in the beginning, I showed you with this tool that you can use select whatever from whatever. This is the standard way, actually. So before PowerShell, this is how developers actually used to work with VMI. And to be honest, I'm also using it right now, because you can query your VMI using the WQL query model. You don't need to learn the new way, right? So how can we query as we used to know? Well, and by the way, this is actually useful, because if you need to access the VMI, you need to do something, right? You can go and say in this specific program, you can double click and it will at least show you something to start with, right? Select everything from computer system, and then there we go. I totally forgot about this. You can also create a script. Good. So if you want to get something, it's simple. You just use get VMI and minus query and select whatever you want. From here, I get everything from my Win32 processor. We can also query the VMI, we can actually filter our VMI results, right? So for example, this is just an example, but let's say I want to query from this specific class where my manufacturer is gigabyte blah blah. If I hit enter, of course, I will have my response that my computer is like this, right? So that's the beauty of it. You can use your old queries, or you can use the new PowerShell instances. And apparently, I totally forgot about this, this VMI Explorer actually outputs you the script. I think you can also select the passwords, the properties, or not really. Interesting. But anyway, as a last example, in this case, I want to show you how you can monitor your hardware and device information. So using PowerShell or VMI and PowerShell, you can monitor and gather information about hardware and devices on the system, right? So VMI provides various classes to retrieve details about hardware components such as processors, memory, disk drives, and more, right? So there are several VMI classes that provide all this hardware information that we need right now. So the most commonly used VMI classes are the Win32 processor, which provides information about the computer processor, of course. The physical memory, the Win32 physical memory, which represents the physical memory module drive. It indicates your capacity, speed, manufacturer, and other attributes. Next, you have the logical disk, the Win32 logical disk, which retrieves information about the computer logical disk that you have installed, removable storage device, how much space you have, etc. Network adapters, right? Win32 network adapters, which show you all your network adapters installed on your computer. Such as, and provides details like adapter name, MAC address, and more. Printer, CD-ROM drive, battery for laptops. Of course, all of these are in Win32, and so forth and so on. So all of this can be found in my book, and also you can gladly use VMI Explorer to find anything else that you might need. So these are just a few of the VMI classes that are out there. Now, for example, let's say this is our last example that I want to show you in terms of VMI. So let me delete this here. Good. For each blah blah. There you go. So as stated, I'm getting multiple information here. First, I'm getting my processor with the getVMI object, my memory, and how many disk drives. Now, I want to show how many processors I have, so total number of processors. Of course, with VMI you can also control services, and this will be my last example that I want to give here, because you have multiple other ones in the book. So, for example, this script right here will use the Win32 service instance or class, and for each service, again we are doing a for loop, we are showing all of the services we have, the name, the display name, the state, and the start mode which are currently placed into. Of course, you can start and stop a service quite easily. For example, let's do it like this. Let's say I have a service called my service, right? You can easily use the getVMI object class and use a filter on the name to be your desired service name, and you can start the service or stop the service. Let's cover our next chapter quite briefly regarding graphical user interface developments with PowerShell. So now PowerShell offers several approaches to GUIs, each catering to different needs and expertise level. All right. So the main and most used one, because this is also native, or not really native, is the fact that this is the original way you can develop graphical user interfaces by using Windows Forms. Right. We all know about Windows Forms. You can do it. You can do them with C# as well, or many other programming languages out there. Right. So WinForms is the traditional GUI framework that enables developers to create Windows-based applications, right? With a wide range of controls and customization options. Now, PowerShell can utilize the .NET Windows Forms to build graphical user interfaces programmatically, or you can use tools like Visual Studio, or as mentioned before, you have other IDE alternatives that make things a little bit simpler. Now, in terms of IDE, indeed, the Windows PowerShell ICE lacks a little bit in this area because you don't have a graphical editor, right? So, for example, let's create a simple form, right? So, if we have a look over this, now if I hit run, we'll have a nice PowerShell. A nice Windows Forms graphical user interface. I can click this and the button is clicked, as you can see, right? So what are we doing here? First, we need to add the Windows Forms assembly. This needs to be done each and every time you are going to build a graphical user interface, and then based on that assembly, we can create a new object, right? This is the form, the new object, which will be actually a Windows Forms, right? Next, we define the text of that in that specific object, the size, the button. We can add a button. We can also define where the button will appear. Of course, this is just a simple example. The button text, and we can also add a click to that button. This is something that we are going to catch, right? This is an action to that specific button, and when that button is clicked, we are simply writing in the console that the button is clicked, right? Next, we need to add that button to the controls of that in that specific form, and then we just show the dialog. Pretty simple, right? The next option you have in terms of graphical user interfaces is with Windows Presentation Foundation. Now, this is a modern and flexible graphical user interface framework. However, this is a little bit it has a steeper learning curve, and you really need to get used to it. Let me show you a quick example. Again, we need to load the assembly, the presentation framework, and to be honest, in this particular example here, maybe it's not that much different from the previous one, right? So what are we doing? We are creating a new object, same as we did with the Windows forms, right? Next, we are going to give it a title, size to content. We are going to create a new object, right? This is a little bit different because we are going to add a button, a controls button. Again, the content or the actual text which appears in that specific button is click me. Again, we are going to use the add click event, right? And we are going to write on the console that the button is clicked. And we are showing the dialog. So if I hit enter, I need to drag it a little bit here. Okay, give me a second. And this is how it looks. I resized it a little bit, my mistake. And if I click here, the button is clicked. Next, apart from this, there are several third-party libraries and modules that have been developed to simplify the graphical user interface development. These libraries offer pre-built controls or templates, functions that allow users to quickly create graphical user interfaces without extensive coding, or this is how they are marketed. Now, there are some popular PowerShell libraries in terms of graphical interfaces that provide pre-built controls. The first one would be the Windows Forms PowerShell module, right? Which provides an easy way to use and create Windows Forms in PowerShell. It includes the functions to create buttons, text boxes, labels, and other controls with just a few lines of code. First, you actually need to install the module. You can get it from the PowerShell gallery or GitHub repository. The module is named like this, WinFormPS. If I click enter, of course I need my administrator rights. Give me a second. Run as administrator. Yes, please, and come here. I think I already have it, but let's see. Oh, then it's installed. There are a few examples on the GitHub page that you can check out. Let me show you one. So let's get this example here. So if I copy paste, of course this won't work. It won't show anything, right? So you can add a column, for example, as you can see, or add multiple ones, edit what's inside them, and so forth and so on, right? So you see how it is, how easy it is to actually design with this, right? Next in the list is this Windows Presentation Foundation controls. Again, this can be downloaded from the GitHub repository, and to install the module, this is the actual command line. I think I already have this installed as well. Let's see. And of course, you can go on the GitHub and get some examples. And next one is Universal Dashboard. Now, this is a little bit different than other frameworks because this is a PowerShell web framework that lets you create interactive web-based dashboards and graphical user interfaces. Now, this comes with a variety of controls, charts, and themes for creating web applications. And this is more or less intended for assisting developers with PowerShell in creating modern and visual appealing web applications without requiring extensive knowledge of web development technologies such as CSS, JavaScript, or whatever else, right? So I'm not going to show this in this video, but you can check their official website. You need to install some modules, and after everything is installed, your browser will pop up. You will have a local folder where you can modify it. Next, I want us to go to a new chapter, and I want to pass quite quickly through this. This is in regards of PowerShell modules, right? So you already saw that I mentioned let's install this module and this module and this module. So what exactly are modules? So modules are PowerShell code units that contain functions, commandlets, variables, and other resources, and they function like libraries. Now they encapsulate specific functions and make your scripts more organized and maintainable. So for example, if you see how scripts are developed inside PowerShell, they are a little bit different with what you are used to, right? For example, in VB script, we had a way on making our scripts look a little bit nicer and to be easy to understand. So for example, all the variables and everything that we need to do, this was done in the first part of the script. And then at the bottom of the script, you will have all the functions defined like you have here, right? Functions, blah, 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 blah. The difference is that in PowerShell, the functions need to be declared first, and you need to scroll down to the bottom to see what do you actually want to do with the script. So for some people, that might be a downside. I got used to it, to be honest. So instead of doing this, you can actually create modules which contain all your functions, right? So for example, let's say I want this function call add blah blah blah. I want it very nicely in a separate module, and then I just import that module, and that's pretty much it. I use the function instead of doing this kind of huge scripts, right? So installing and importing modules, it's easy. To install a module, it's easy. You just use the install module commandlet and provide the module name. If the module is present on PowerShell Gallery, it will be downloaded automatically. If once you install this module, right? For example, I install something for I don't know what. Once you install, you can import the module and access its functions and commandlets in your current session by using the import module commandlet. So again, install module, import module. Now, you can discover the available modules using the find module commandlet, which searches on the PowerShell gallery for modules, right? So let's say I want to search for AZ, like right for Azure. Now, if we are going to do this, we need to wait a little bit. And there you go. This is the repositories on PowerShell Gallery. The module name is AZ, and the description is Microsoft Azure PowerShell commandlets to manage resources in Azure, right? To see which modules are already installed on your system, you just use the get module commandlet, and these are my modules here. Now, you can also create your own modules, of course. There are tons of third-party modules available on PowerShell Gallery. So how do you create your own one? So creating your own custom module allows you to bundle all your functions and commandlets for easy distribution and reuse. To create a module, we simply organize our functions in a script file, but when we save it, we don't save it as a PS1, as a standard script. We save it as a PSM1 extension. Then we need to use, not in all cases, but we need to use the new module manifest to create a module manifest that describes your module's metadata, such as author, version, and description. So let's start to build a simple PowerShell module with two functions, one for calculating the area of a square and one for calculating the area of our cycle. So for example, let's do it like this. I'm going to hit a copy paste. Bam, bam, bam. So as you can see, my cat doesn't leave me alone. Go away. Thank you. So as you can see, we are defining two functions: get square area, get cycle area, and we throw whatever we need to throw. And we need to export the module member, the functions, we need to export them because we need to use them, right? So let's save this file. Let's save it as my mat module.psm1, but this needs to be saved in a specific location. So let's go to user profile, and then I need documents, Windows PowerShell modules, and I need to save it here. This is for the current user. If the modules folder doesn't exist, just create it manually. So after this is saved, we can use the custom module in our PowerShell session, right? So let me close this one. Actually, I need to open a new one. Cool. So what's the first thing we need to do? We need to import it, right? So import module, my mat module. There you go, it's imported. Now we can use the functions. Remember, we have two functions. We have the get square area and get circle area. So we can get square area side length 5, which turns out to be 25, or we can use the second commandlet or function that we created, get circle area radius 3. So remember, in order for the functions to be available in other PowerShell session or scripts, we need to use the export module member for those specific functions. Otherwise, those functions will not be readable. You can have other functions that aid you here in this script, but if you don't export them, this won't be available. They will only work inside your module. Last but not least, let's talk a bit. This is maybe a very wide area to discuss. To be honest, if we are going to do a video about Azure and PowerShell and all the integrations you can do with PowerShell, it will take us a while. I just quickly want to explain to you how it works and how you can use it. So PowerShell and Azure work together to enable the cloud administrators and developers to manage and automate various aspects of their Azure environment. Now, PowerShell integration with Azure is achieved through the Azure PowerShell modules. Remember, we searched for that one, right? Which provide commandlets specifically designed for managing the Azure resources. Now, if we see in this example, the AZ module, the Azure module doesn't appear in my list, so we need to install it. So we need to install module AZ, minus name AZ. Of course. Give me a second. Totally forgot that I closed my one. Cool. And let's do it like this. Install module name AZ. And give it a minute. Yes to all. Okay, so it started. As you can see, there are a lot of dependent packages on this. So the AZ module actually contains a lot of other modules, other dependencies. You see logic app maintenance, key vault, media, monitor, network cloud. Each of these dependent package contains a set of commandlets which let you administer that specific area. This one was for storage, and so forth and so on. Great, so now it's installed. Okay, so now it's installed. Let's open PowerShell ICE again. Now, I'm only going to go through a few examples. You have more explanations in the book. If you are curious about this chapter, please let me know, but I will do a separate video because this video is getting a little bit longer, long as it is. So, for example, if I want to list my resource groups, right, what I'm going to do? I'm going to do connect to Azure account and get your Azure resources group. Why do I need the connect Azure account? Now, accounts in Azure Active Directory are a popular way to authenticate and manage access to your Azure resources. You can interact with Azure by using your user identity or an identity assigned to you if you have an Azure AD account, or Entra ID as it's now called. The Connect AZ account commandlet can be used to connect to Azure by using your Azure ID, and this will pop up a window. You will log in and you will have access to run your PowerShell scripts, but according to your RBAC roles. So if you have roles of managing, for example, the virtual machines, that's the only way and that's the only place where your PowerShell scripts will work, because you are constrained in Azure to only work on that specific area. So then I want to get all the resources, all the resource groups. This is just an example. I don't want to modify anything in this example in my tenant. So if I click enter, okay, and if I hit F5, this will appear. Let me log in. Okay, let me also give my text code. And there you go. I'm now logged in and I get all the Azure resources group, and I think I don't have any, to be honest, at the moment. Let's try to use, let's see if I have a storage account. I should have one. There you go. So this is my Azure storage account, right? See what it is. And now, once I'm connected, in this session, I can perform any other commandlets or operations on the Azure tenant as I want. As soon as I leave this session and close this, if I want to reuse these commandlets, it will not work because I'm not logged in and my token is expired. So you need to use the Connect AZ account again, connect to your account, and then perform all the tasks you want. Now, the last thing I want to show you is that you can also use the Azure Cloud Shell. So Azure Cloud Shell is an interactive command line environment provided by Microsoft that allows you to use Azure resources directly, as you do with PowerShell, but directly from the Azure portal. So if I'm going to open this is the CLI. Now I already have it configured on my account, but first you need to actually have a storage account created and then configure it. I showed that in my book, how you can configure your Azure Cloud Shell to work, and then you can choose to work via PowerShell or via Bash, right? So for example, I completely forgot what, let's get our AZ storage account, right? And you already have it here. Actually, let me put this a little bit higher. And as you can see, you can now use all your commandlets directly. So if you don't want to use the actual website itself, you can use PowerShell directly here and type all your commands and make it work here. You don't need to go through your IDE, connect to your AZ account and so forth and so on. You can do all your operations inside the Azure Cloud Shell. How cool is that? So, as stated, I just wanted to show you how this works. I don't want to spend more time on this topic. Again, please, if you really find this useful, if you really want to understand how to use PowerShell and Azure, let me know and I will consider making a separate video and maybe capture more areas where you can use your PowerShell inside your Azure environment. Until then, I really hope that you enjoyed my book. I really hope it helped you a little bit in your journey to learn about PowerShell. I really hoped that this video will help you. So if you like it, give it a thumbs up please on YouTube, and as always, you can always connect to me. I have my contact details on my website. So until then, thank you very much, guys, and I wish you a very nice day. Bye bye.